Mental load is increasingly discussed because it is an important topic, especially in families. However, what is mental load actually? What is it all about? We'll find out today. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung and today I'd like to discuss mental load with you. So, first of all, what is mental load? Mental load describes the mental burden that comes with organizing, managing, planning tasks, with having to keep track of things, remember things, and so on. So it is an additional invisible burden that comes with visible work, with visible tasks. And that is especially relevant in the domestic area, because at work we pretty much understand, we know that planning and managing is pretty much serious actual work. For example, if someone is a project manager, we understand that this is a full-time job and that this person will not be able to actually take part in project tasks. In the domestic area, however, all those managing, organizing tasks, all that mental load is pretty much invisible. We are very much unaware of it. And that is a problem because the distribution of mental load is quite uneven. Usually women shoulder a big majority of the mental load in the household. This especially applies to families with children where there is more mental load to go around from the beginning, and this is what the current discussion is focused on. Let's have a look at a simple example. Let's say we have a family, father, mother, and child, and the child is invited to a birthday party. Now, the mother will read the invitation, will plan this appointment, maybe cancel something else, and the mother also has all the necessary background knowledge. She knows the child's friends, she knows their parents, maybe she even knows where they live, otherwise she will find out, she will plan how to get to the location, she will figure out or ask how picking up the children after the party is supposed to work. She will ask about the present, what present they are supposed to give the birthday child. She will find out where it can be bought. At that point, she might approach the father and tell him the child is invited to a birthday party. As a present, we will give whatever action figure that is available from whatever shop. Could you please go there and buy it? Now the father will go and buy this action figure as the birthday present, and the father will probably think, wow, this worked out nicely again in our modern, fair, equal rights relationship. I bought the birthday present, my wife will drive the kid to the party, we equally shared the work. And he is totally unaware of this big imbalance we have due to all the mental load the mother had to carry alone. And this is what is discussed about mental load. The discussion was pretty much started by a comic called You Should Have Asked by French blogger and cartoonist Emma. Emma published this comic, You Should Have Asked, in the British newspaper, on the homepage of the British newspaper The Guardian, under the headline The Gender War of Household Chores. This comic is also available on Emma's own website for free. I will link to it in the video description, and you can also get it in printed form together with several other comics by Emma as a nice book. I will also provide a link to that in the video description in English. It is quite a nice book. The additional comics that are not so much in the focus of public attention still are quite interesting, interesting topics, interesting points of view. So I very much enjoyed this book. And of course, it gives a good introduction, a good basic understanding of the issue of mental load. Now, in this comic, you should have asked, it starts with a scene where Emma is visiting a couple she's friends with, and at the moment the mother is trying to cook dinner while at the same time feeding a small child. And things go wrong because she is distracted by the child. She doesn't pay attention to the cooking, and it boils over and it spills onto the floor, and the husband arrives at the scene and says, "Oh no, what a catastrophe! What have you done? Why didn't you say anything? You should have asked. I would have helped you." And Emma explains that this attitude of "you should have asked, I would have helped," that this is quite problematic because it places the woman, the wife, in the position of household manager, of project leader of domestic affairs, while the man takes the position of a mere underling who doesn't need to take responsibility for anything. So the wife is responsible for anything, has to take care of anything, track everything, and so on. For example, the wife is responsible for milk being in the fridge. She can send the husband to the supermarket and tell him, "Please go buy milk." However, she is responsible, and it's her fault if at any point there is no milk in the fridge. And this imbalance of responsibility and the attitude that comes with it is very nicely demonstrated in an example that Emma describes in the comic, that is about a cluttered table that is full of junk. And Emma wants to clear that table, so she picks up something and she wants to put it away. However, on the way, she stumbles upon a dirty towel lying on the floor that she picks up and takes to the laundry basket. However, the laundry basket is full, so she puts everything into the washing machine. There she notices that there are still vegetables from grocery shopping lying on top of the washing machine that need to be put in the fridge. So she does that, and there she notices that there is no more mustard in the fridge. So she puts it on the shopping list, and so on, and it takes a full 2 hours to finally clear that table. And it will be cluttered again in no time, but that's not the point. The point is, had she asked the man to clear the table, it would have been way faster. However, the dirty towel would still be lying on the floor, the vegetables would be rotting in the kitchen, there would be no mustard for dinner, and so on, because other than the woman, the man does not have this idea of "I am responsible for everything." He wouldn't see things everywhere he needs to take care of, but he can just ignore all of that. In Germany, Patricia Camerata, a German author, contributed a lot to the topic of mental load. She published a book about it that is called literally "Escaping from the Mental Load Trap: How to Achieve Equal Distribution of Tasks in the Family." Unfortunately, there is no English translation of that one. I will give you a few brief insights, just very, very brief ones, because this is, of course, not a book review, so just some brief insights. First of all, what I found very interesting were some sections of the book that deal with convictions that are so deeply held that we are not really aware of them, never question them. For example, one section I found especially interesting deals with a phrase we use in German to describe that someone is a model husband. Literally translated, it would be my husband also helps with household chores, or I also help my wife with household chores. I also lend a hand in household chores, something like that. Maybe there is a similar phrase in your own language. Now, the interesting thing is that this commonly used phrase actually makes no sense, actually is quite paradoxical, because if we think about it, what are those tasks the man helps with? I help my girlfriend washing my dirty laundry? No, that doesn't sound right. I help cooking the food that I eat for dinner? That doesn't sound right either. I help cleaning the apartment that I live in? Now, all of that really makes no sense, but we still frequently use this phrase without becoming aware of this. And obviously, this phrase suggests that if I help the woman, if I help my girlfriend, I'm really spoiling her. I'm really giving her like a great bonus, something. And it also suggests that I deserve gratitude for helping. So I deserve gratitude for this tiny contribution I make, but my wife or girlfriend or whatever doesn't necessarily deserve gratitude for the majority of the work she does, because, well, yeah, that's the job of the woman. So in examples like this, it becomes obvious that convictions like that are still deeply entrenched. Another example I liked concerned the way we see the division of labor. Now imagine a situation where the wife is at home taking care of household chores and the kids, and the husband is working full time, which nowadays might still occur, for example, in the context of parental leave after a child is born. Now, it is quite obvious to us that the man who is working full time is off work in the evening. So he really does not need to do any household chores. He should enjoy his spare time, have some quality time. And if he still does help with household chores in the evening, again, this is a special treatment. He's really spoiling the wife. However, at the same time, it is quite obvious that the wife never goes off work, not after 8 or 10 or 16 hours, because obviously taking care of the child and household chores, that never ends. So she doesn't get any spare time really, and we pretty much take that for granted. I should mention about the book that it doesn't force the position that all men are jerks who do it on purpose, something like that. But it really focuses on the idea that mental load is something we are often not aware of, and that this misperception needs to change in order for things to get better. She also gives some advice on how to deal with the mental load problem. Again, I will only give you some very brief points here. Very early, she emphasizes that self-optimization does not work, is not helpful. So if I say to myself, oh, I just have to try harder, I just need to plan my time more efficiently, get more work done in the same time, stuff like that, this isn't a good idea. This will not work. What is helpful, on the other hand, what is also mentioned by Emma, is to lowering your standards, lowering your demands. the demands you make against yourself. So for example, it helps to say, oh well, there is some stuff lying around. It's not as clean as I would wish it to be, but it's fine, I don't care. This can help to take some pressure, some immediate pressure off at the beginning. Of course, this is treating symptoms, but it can be a small help at the beginning. Now, of course, to really deal with the mental load problem, what we need to do is achieve an equal distribution of tasks and responsibilities with our partner. Now, and the most important point here is to really not just distribute the tasks, but also the responsibility that comes with it. So, for example, if one partner in a relationship says they will do the grocery shopping, then it needs to be clear that they will also take responsibility for all of it. So they will take responsibility for organizing the supplies, for making sure things don't run out that are needed frequently. They will write the shopping list. They will keep the housekeeping book if you have anything like that. They will really take care of all of the mental load that belongs to the task. Another thing we should keep in mind is to also consider like general conditions. Camerata points out, for example, that schools, kindergartens, and the like often just have the contact information for the mother, that they are often just given the contact information for the mother, and there it is a good step to also provide the contact information of the father, so they can also contact the father if there is an emergency or something like that. This is a good step to consider. Another thing we should consider is the frequency of tasks. That is quite important, because Camerata says she has encountered a lot of couples that tried to distribute the household chores evenly. However, they ended up with lists for the man and the woman, where the man had tasks like programming the new television, taking the car to the routine inspection, while the woman had tasks like cooking dinner, getting the children ready for school. So the husband had tasks that occur like once a year or something like that, and the wife had tasks that occur almost daily, and that is of course not a very even distribution. So also take the frequency into account. Now, when distributing household chores, there are some challenges to overcome. For example, different standards might be a point of discussion and struggle. And this might also be a reason it's sometimes difficult for the woman to give tasks to the man, because she might be afraid, oh, if he does it, he won't do it properly. He won't do it as I would do it. He won't aspire to the same standard. And there it is important to discuss those matters and to agree on a common standard on things like how clean is the apartment supposed to be after I clean it. So both are really happy with the agreement that is finally reached. Now, distributing responsibilities and mental load equally, of course, means an additional burden for the man, for the husband, but it is certainly worth taking this burden, taking this additional work and mental load, because it comes with several advantages. First of all, it will obviously lead to a happier relationship, where you have a partner who is not permanently on the verge of collapse. And it will also mean, which is a quite an important point, better relationships with your kids. Because as we know now, the relationship with the father is just as important as that with the mother. So you will have a better relationship with your children, which is also quite important. So, nice book. It is quite a helpful guideline to dealing with those issues, but as I said, unfortunately, not available in English. Now, one important question remains, and that is, how does this mental load issue arise in families? How is this unequal distribution created in the first place? This is discussed by both Emma and Camerata. And an important aspect is that it is established during parental leave and then it sticks around. Because in regard to parental leave, we still have the issue that women take more and longer parental leaves than men. Often men just take like 2 months and often at the same time as the woman, which is not that helpful. So usually the wife ends up taking care of household chores and of children in the first couple of months. And of course, this means, first of all, a habit is established. She is the one who is responsible for all those tasks, and she also acquires expertise. She knows how to do all of them, and once both work again, this just sticks around. It's like, oh, mom does it anyway, so she can just continue doing it. Or mom is the only one who knows how to do it anyway, so she better does it. And furthermore, the woman might not be inclined to give tasks to the man because of the different standards that I mentioned before. And finally, between taking care of household chores and children and work, she might just not have the time or energy left to discuss distribution of household chores or to even struggle for it. Another important aspect is our attitude, our convictions. I already mentioned some interesting points Camerata brought up, and this is also discussed by Emma. She points out issues we have in education, for example, where we still have this male typical toys for boys and girl typical toys, female typical toys for girls, like dolls and doll houses, where she pretty much is already trained to take on the role of mother and household manager later. So this is an important issue. And Emma also points out the issue of role models. Because if we observed an unequal distribution of chores and mental load in our childhood, we might be prone to replicate it. And this is also an important point in consideration of advantages we can achieve again. Because if we manage to have a relationship, a fair relationship where work and responsibilities are distributed equally, then we can be good role models for our children, and we will make it easier for them to have a fair relationship and equal distribution of the workload and mental load in the future. Let me finish with some closing remarks. Now, mental load is an interesting topic, even though a sad and problematic one that has a lot of different aspects. First of all, I find it important to remember the general idea, the general realization that planning, organizing, managing is serious work on its own and that the workload needs to be considered. For example, you, just like me, might sometimes have days where in the evening you think, wait, I worked hard all day, but I didn't really make a lot of visible progress. How can that be? And those are situations where those mental load tasks, where those tasks regarding organizing, planning play a role. Now, of course, the major point, a major aspect here is the social problem. Mental load as a social problem, the issue that equality between men and women, equality in relationships, in families, is not up to the standard we maybe thought it would be, that there are more deficits than we might have been aware of, and that there are pressing issues to take care of. However, we shouldn't only focus on this topic of the husband, wife and child family. We should keep in mind that mental load will of course occur everywhere, in families of all kinds of gender combinations. There is probably the rare exception where the man carries the majority of the mental load. This probably all appears. And I think especially important is to consider single parents, because single parents obviously have to always shoulder all the mental load by themselves without any chance to share it. And we should also consider issues like care of relatives. If things like care of relatives come in that bring a lot of additional work and additional mental load, things get more problematic, or honorary activities. So I think there are a lot of important aspects we need to consider, and I guess mental load will remain an important topic for quite a while. Speaking of things to keep track of, I would be quite happy if you gave the video a like and maybe subscribed to the channel. We will see each other again in the next video. For today, I'll take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.